Joining me today is New Hampshire Representative Neal Kurk, who's chair of the House Finance Committee. So Neal, I want to keep a little bit on the budget.
Sure.
I read some reports that this compromise, or this resolution, took some of the wind out of sort of the O'Brien camp, sails, as it were. Is that an accurate read from your perspective? What does that do to that side of the Republican Party?
You're right, John. There has been a split in the House Republican Party. O'Brien ran for Speaker. He lost to Jasper, who was supported by the Democrats, and that's been a burr under the saddle of many Republicans, both those within and not within the O'Brien camp. O'Brien started off by trying to have a separate majority caucus, he called it, because technically a majority of the Republicans voted for Jasper, for him, O'Brien. And I was one of them. I supported him. Because he was the nominee. I originally supported Representative Chandler. He lost to O'Brien, so I supported O'Brien as the caucus nominee. He lost to Jasper. O'Brien needed 120 votes to stop the compromise from going forward. I don't know his motives. I haven't spoken to him about it. But he didn't get those. He got about 73. And so from a political perspective, he's not been very successful in trying to create problems for Jasper. He hasn't done very much, and on those two efforts, the budget itself and the veto override, he didn't accomplish very much. I think his biggest accomplishment was when it came to the budget as it passed the House, because at the last minute he brokered a deal with the Speaker to have certain changes made in exchange for his members' support. And that went through, and I was part of that.
What were those elements?
Oh, they wanted to reduce certain expenditures. They wanted to use money from the rainy day fund to do this. They didn't want to hit the towns as hard in terms of we have a plan in the Education Trust Fund that held certain cities and towns harmless from changes that were made in 2011 or 12. And we were going to phase those out, as had always been the intent. The rate at which we were going to phase those out was higher than the O'Brien people wanted. So the compromise was, okay, we'll phase them out, but instead of 15% a year or 16% a year, it would only be 10% a year. That required us to get more money. We took it out of the rainy day fund and a few other places, and the O'Brien people supported the House Republican budget as it went out from House Finance. That was, I think, the high point of the O'Brien people's strength. At this point, it looks as though the caucus is disintegrating. O'Brien has announced he's not going to run again. His chief lieutenant, Representative Stepanak, apparently is not going to run again. Both of them have a private sector business venture that they really want to focus on, and frankly, it's a very exciting venture. So I think that much of the steam and the impetus behind the O'Brien faction has dissipated, and I don't see them playing a huge role in the next session. And of course, having spoken that, I could be dead wrong, but that's the way things look at this point.
And like the weather, things may change.
Yes.
Do you think if that faction sort of is out there, how does that change the calculations in terms of any number of other issues that the House is going to look at the remainder of the session?
Well, if you take out the O'Brien name and just look at that particular group of Republicans, they're generally more conservative. As in the nation, the New Hampshire House reflects a wide variety of Republican perspectives in its membership. And so there are people on the right and on the left and in the center of the party, and we have to come together if there's going to be a Republican position. Because if we're divided, the Democrats will side with the more liberal faction, and the, let's call it the moderate or conservative position, will lose. So there are a lot of, on certain issues, there's a lot of discussion as to how the Republicans are going to get the votes necessary to pass something and avoid having the Democrats block what we're doing. We do not have the votes, even if all the Republicans vote the right way, to override a Democratic governor's veto, as was the case with the budget. So the governor vetoed it, and the only reason it survived was she asked the Democrats to override her own veto after the compromise had been reached.
You know, we're out of time in this segment. When we return, I want to continue focusing on the next major issue, will be the Medicaid expansion, so please stay with us.